So what I do is I make sure that when I go dense on a subject, because I could talk about self-tape, which is the subject for today, I could talk about that for 5 hours, and no one would be here. So understand that I break things up because I don't know which piece of the full you're going to need. Maybe you need a hundy. Maybe you just needed 7% of that one thing that I covered. But I'm saying this early on when we're sharing the content of the IG Lives, so that you understand exactly how it's going to be. Could be a caddy waiting to be discovered. That's awesome. I love that. As a former collegiate golfer, I freaking love that. And yes, Anisha, I upload them afterwards. Just make sure you follow me, love. Just go to the Kevin E. I'm getting better with being able to see the screen and not lose my train of thought. Which can sometimes be tough for me, but I'll make sure I do that. So just understand that I never know which piece of the 0 to 100 you may need. I do know that self-tape is a huge conversation. So I want to make sure we say this. Basically, pencil's got to go in the ear. So basically, you have 5 items of 2 sides to the self-tape conversation. And you're going to see more and more of this from me in terms of what we deal with our own self-dialogue about how we discuss things, and then what I call showbiz scenarios. So you have just the material itself, obviously, that we have to deal with. The big issue, and please know, as an elected official at SAG-AFTRA, we are dealing with this, and we are unequivocally going to find a way to get some piece of this into our contract, known as CBA, Collective Bargaining Agreement. The second item is the notification, how much time we're given. So I know you can watch this again, but sometimes guys write these things down. It helps when you write stuff. It sticks in the brain better. There's a zillion studies on that. I don't need to discuss the value of writing stuff down. There's a notification part of it. And then there's, what I call the file and or the edit, meaning there are lots of different self-tapes we get. If it's not a live self-tape like with a commercial using the app, using Blue Jean, I'm talking about when we just record something and send it in. That's what I'm saying. Not something that happens live that they're seeing, and so therefore there's no post-production to it. But one of the challenges that we have is that this stuff isn't conformed into a box at the moment, and so you'll get different instructions for whether or not it's, all 3 scenes in one file or 3 separate, plus a slate and a thing and a guy and a hoo-hoo dilly. So we have that part, and then there's just the editing part of them. So that's 3 things related to self-tape. And then you have the situation with equipment, just the mere equipment that you have, and then the 5th one is the setup. Now that's the stuff that goes into a self-tape, your material, your notifications, the file or the edit part, the equipment, and your setup. On the other side of that, which we don't tend to think about a lot, and this is one of the problemos, okay? We don't tend to think about the fact that there's going to be a glaring difference of not only the type of audition it is, but whether or not it's union or whether or not it's non-union. And I don't tend to cross-pollinate conversations too much, especially when we only have 30 minutes, y'all. I mean, hello, McFly. So I'm not getting into that convo. I'm just sharing with you that either doesn't mean that non-union projects necessarily have a complete amateur behind them, but there is a disparity necessarily between feature films, modified films, and standard broadcast television, and the way those auditions are presented from necessarily, a non-union item of the same. So you have those 2 problems, but then you also have this. You also have the fact that that audition is coming to you commonly through a representative, or you're getting it only yourself through some sort of electronic casting portal. And then there's the reality, you guys, that the casting person. Now, I say casting person because if it's a non-union project, it just could be somebody's friend. But when you mix into the 5 things we have to deal with just in terms of mechanically and artistically getting the self-tape done, there's still another side to it. And that's why I spend time setting stuff up. I just want you guys from this point forward to ponder things we sometimes don't ponder. Because when we don't give anything or something, and you could say this about your spouse, partner, or your dog, when you don't give something its due consideration, something's going to get left out. And you have to consider whether it's union, non-union. Did it come through your rep? Is it just you handling it? And also the fact that casting directors are a part of this process. And what we fail sometimes to remember, even veterans that I know, because this conversation gets brought up in union shit, okay? We fail to remember that casting directors are employed by the producer just like we are. And they're also really independent middlemen. They're just human resources is what casting is. So there's a degree of they're getting their instructions from their employer, the producer, who could be eventually your producer as well. So that's a whole other Oprah, as I like to say, and we will eventually go down the road of covering stuff about self-tapes. But what I want to make sure is I get in this conversation, the setup about self-tapes of the 5 things we commonly deal with and the 5 things we don't sometimes consider about self-tapes. Okay, so we got the material, the notification, the file and the edit, the equipment, and the setup. And on the other side, we have union, non-union. Did it come through a rep? Are you handling it self? And also remembering this is coming through some form of a casting person in some way, or someone that's handling casting. Now, with that said, as we are getting close to the midway point, hey Christina, good to see you. And Christina could win the book, okay? She could win the book. I got all the names right in here. We're calling it out. It doesn't matter. There are people in here from Europe. It makes no difference who wins this. This was about people who subscribe to the YouTube channel and or who follow me on Instagram. Do both. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Tell your friends' enemies of their enemies. And y'all, because I'm going to be putting up a ton of content between now and the end of March. Holy crap balls. There's going to be a litany of information that winds up over at The Kevin E on YouTube, which we call Q-tips. So I call the show The Actor Overcomes. Over on the YouTube channel, it's KEW, Kevin E West. Q-tips. Haha, I know, it's very cute. I blame Paul Jackson for that, but it's awesome. It was a genius idea. Okay, so here, are we ready? Are we ready? Here it comes. Here it comes. I got the basket. I don't have to close my eyes because I tri-folded all of the names. Christina, are you on pins and needles? Here it comes. Whoop, wait a minute. See, that's what happened. Got connected. Oop, which one's going to shake out? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's still stuck. Okay, I have one. Here we go. Here it comes. And I have to go with John William has won 7 Deadly Sins, The Actor Overcomes. And I'll be signing it for John and sending it to him. Now, John is on Instagram. So, bye, Anisha. So, John, sorry, Christina. You were in there, girlfriend. Wrote it down myself. Dang. But you can always just go to kevinewest.com, go to the store, pick up the book. And when I see you, when we're finally back doing things in person, Christina, I will happily sign it for you. Whee! Yes, congratulations to John. %. John's not here currently this morning, but I will DM him and get his info and send him off his book. I don't know where John lives. John could live in Ireland for all I know. I have no idea. Okay, now, back to the subject at hand. So, first and foremost, and this just happened to me, guys, this happens to all of us. COVID has completely changed. Now, we were headed the direction of virtual auditions. We were headed the direction of not necessarily going into offices as much just because of technology. But obviously, you guys, we all know that the global pandemic and COVID changed the game. And in a lot of ways, for some of you, it's been great. And I know this emotionally, psychologically. Some people hate it. I'm in between, which is not uncommon for me. I'm pretty much a walking contradiction in my life anyway. There's a part of me that loves it because the ability, when you talk about the setup of the 5, see, this is why I say this ahead of time, because of the setup, I don't have to be in Los Angeles. I mean, I'm going to be going to Vegas for March Madness for 4 days. If I get an audition, no problem. because I can just take my little baby mini tripod with the thing and a whoop-de-doo and a ring light. And this is one of the reasons why, in terms of your equipment, you don't have to put together a monster studio, but it does have to at least be able to see la faccia, your face has to be lit somewhat well, and we have to be able to hear you. That's the bare minimum. I know this pisses a lot of people off, especially people of a certain age, some of whom are around my age. I get it, but I'm going to remind y'all, and I'm saying this to everybody who sees this, ever sees this, I don't care if it's 3 years from now. You know, there was a time we had a horse and buggy, and then it went bye-bye too. And eventually, if you wanted to do some form of quick transportation, you had to eventually get a car. This is why we're working with the union, because we're trying to conform down the way the information is put out to us regarding a job interview, because job interviews shouldn't take hours. There should not be 27 pages to something. I just spent a good 12 hours, not a joke, on an audition for a lead in a film that my man Paul Christian's in. What's up, Paul? I just did a good 12 hours on a film leading a film that was going to shoot in Europe because of the density of the material. And what happens with these this is the world we live in. It wasn't a studio feature. It's not a television show. This is why I said the medium matters in self-tape, right? This was a low-budget independent film. Now, low-budget contract, $2.5 million, not bad. I'm all for going to Budapest any day of the week. I spent 12 hours. And the project lost their funding. So this is part of the challenge that we have. So let's make sure we keep our frustration in certain directions and not have it affect our auditions. I get that we don't like the idea of having to become a producer or having to become a filmmaker simply to do a job interview. I agree with you. But we are in a place, and we're not going back, guys. I do believe that eventually commercials, maybe 50%, will come back to being in person when we live in a safer world. But I'm going to tell you right now that because of things like Blue Jean, because of things like Ecamm, because of the ability that we have technologically to get people who are clients and ad agencies all on to watch something without having to be in the room. Even if you're in Los Angeles, man, and you have to drive 5 miles, that can be 35 minutes on a bad day in LA. But much less, you sometimes have clients and ad agencies, people are in Chicago versus Los Angeles versus New York. Same thing as it might be in Europe. People doing the project could be in Paris, but they're going to, the people from the ad agency are in Spain. I don't know. So don't be shocked if you don't see but about 10% of theatrical auditions come back to in-person, and maybe only 50%. So since this is the new normal, and this is where we are, I'm just sharing with you. You're going to have a decent camera on your phone. You're going to have to at least have a basic light, because if you're in a hotel room, you're not in my studio with a pretty drop or a green screen or a whoop-de-doo. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as they can see your face and hear you, don't let the equipment and the setup throw you off too much. And you probably are going to have to at least get the bare minimum learning skills about iMovie or some form of editing. That's just, unfortunately, guys, that's the Mendoza line. That's par in golf. Sorry, collegiate golfer. That's where we're at. And if you get frustrated, because I got a phone call the other day from a longtime thespian pal, who's not global, they're here in Los Angeles, but they were angry about what I just said. They were frustrated by how much material. Not to mention, I've gotten it. I've gotten an 8-page pilot audition, and they give you 24 hours. I'm like, what planet are you on, man? There are people who are getting same-day things now for commercials in less than 2 hours. Charlie can speak to this. The bottom line is, my man Double D's in the house. Look at Double D done rolled up. That is outstanding. Tatiana, hey, good to see you. There are people I know like Charlie who auditions for commercials all the time. My face clearly doesn't do it for the commercial community. And why? Why are they giving us no notice? 2 reasons. One, they don't have to. There's no guideline in our current collective bargaining agreement within the union for union jobs that says you have to. And because they believe you can. Because they believe that anywhere at any time somebody's holding their phone, and what's the big deal? So sometimes you got to look at that and take advantage of that. The belief or idea, and this is what we're working on in the union, the belief or idea that just because you have a phone means that you would be an appropriate place for sound and lighting wouldn't necessarily be true. So I'm not telling you that the bar is being lowered in terms of lighting and sound, but I am sharing with you that when you get no notice, there's a degree of understanding. Man, I know people that, they have all dealing with kids at school, all the kind of stuff that goes on. But right now, we're kind of in the tornado of virtual auditions, self-tapes. We're in the tornado of it. And it's all in a blender, and it's all going at different speeds, and it's all got different crap mixed up in it, and it's a pain in the ash. And I get it. Now, if somebody has a particular question about self-tapes or a challenge that you've had, please pop it in there. I'll try and catch it before it goes by the screen. I'll do my best. But the bottom line is, careful about blaming casting directors. This is what came out of this phone call the other day. If you have a representative, do this. If you get something that feels unfair in terms of the scope or length of the material, and or you get something that seems unfair in terms of length of time of notification, and you have a representative, speak to them. Don't just go get cranky, punch a wall. I'm not saying you would, I'm just saying metaphorically. Don't punch a wall and ask them, hey, the email said due by 4 o'clock today, and it's 2. Can I get some latitude on that shit? So anyway, yeah, see, Dave, I'm not even there yet. That's very cute, though. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got you. That's very sexy. You notice how right in the middle of IG Live, even Kevin E. just learned something. He goes, okay, good point, Dave. There's the question button right there. Don't worry, it's only my 3rd show. I'll be on this in a heartbeat, and I'll be making shit up. I'll be doing a TED Talk on IG Lives. No. So don't get upset. Just don't get cranky in here, because that's going to mess your audition up. If you have a frustration about the notification or scope of the material, speak to your representative. Text them, write them, whatever it is you do with them, and just go, hey, can I get some latitude? Don't let it piss you off. Also, if you're only handling this yourself, if this comes through whatever portal you use, just by chance, and you're the one who has to then speak to the individual who gave you the audition information, and it's not your rep, it's just somebody who's doing a project, ask them. Guys, don't play small to the point that it harms you. This is a profession, even when it's a non-union project. This is a profession. It's a service for hire. This is a job interview, man. And this is why I constantly say show business is life. You wouldn't if you were going to interview just for a basic job, a temp job. There's a ton of stuff that you would never accept about a parameter of a job interview that for some reason this community, actors, are just willing to accept because we're actors. Hey, Tammy Sue. Don't. You don't have to be a jerk about it. Again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? It's not what you do, it's how you do it. So make sure that you just ask. Whether or not you're going to be honest or you choose to tell white lies, I can't get into that for you. But, it's like, look, I got the kid and the thing and the blah and the big wheels in the yard and there's a pool guy and the plumber's outside. Can I get an extra 3 hours? What you choose to make up is up to you. But protect the performer, man. Protect, that's my hashtag. Been doing it for 3 decades. There are people on this live who've known me, Dave DeAngelis, Paul Jackson, since the mid-90s. You don't have to harm your art just 'cause they said. Ask, man. That's why I equate life to the business of show business. If this were an interview for a corp job and they asked something absurd, they sent you a text or an email on Tuesday afternoon at 1:30 and said, can you be in San Diego at 3? You'd be like, No, because I don't have a Jetson pack this week. So, just saying, same logic, y'all. Just don't become a victim in that way of the quagmire and tornado that we're currently in with self-tapes. It is what it is. And I promise everybody who watches, sees, and listens to this, 3 years ago in negotiations, commercially, they're about to start right now in New York, theatrically next year here in Los Angeles, and I'm at least currently on the negotiating committee, we are unequivocally working on it. I promise. I can tell you that self-tape was a conversation that probably made it to item number, 72 3 years ago. And now it's item 4 on our list. It matters. We have a ton of complaints, and a ton of complaints, and we are going to get at it. So understand that's where we're headed. Okay, so I'm going to recap real fast before the show ends because, I keep it on time. Remember, it's 5 pieces to a self-tape. 5 pieces. The material, okay, the notifications, the file or the edit process, the equipment, and your setup, meaning your background, where you be at. But there's 5 things a lot of us don't think about in that same conversation. And that is whether it's union and the type of medium, film versus television, non-union, okay? Whether or not the audition came through your representative because that gives you an outlet to communicate with, or whether it just came through your own efforts, electronic portal, friend, doesn't matter. That leaves the communication up to you. And just remember that the casting person in process, yep, there's my screwed up finger from baseball. The casting process, they're not your enemy. They're also the employee to the employer, just like we are. So if you're communicating with them, just communicate with them as if you were talking to human resources. Hey man, I need a couple extra hours here. This is crazy town. Can you please, grant me that? I can't do this in 2 hours. So don't get upset at what the current platform and the current scope of the scenario is. It's getting worked on, and it's been worked out even better over the last 2 years. Just make sure you take care of yourself and give yourself the performer, protect the performer, so that you get your performance in that you need, because this is a really weird interface now for auditioning for job interviews. It just is. So post this, guys, please. Share with your friends. Tell your friends. Go to The Kevin E on IG and The Kevin E on YouTube. Subscribe. I'm going to be laying down all kinds of free content. And for those folks who know me, that if you take 125 hours just in titles of subjects in my brain or in my book, kevinewest.com, there's a blog there as well, you'll realize that when I parse that out in 10-minute segments on videos, there's going to be a whole ton of content there as time goes by. It is Friday. I wish everybody an awesome weekend. Go check out Film Festival Live. Follow at Film Festival Live because my man Will Roberts rocks. And so in the meantime, have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for being here. Awesomeness. And Dave and my man Double D, Hell's Kitchen, the guy, PJ, rock on. Thank you guys for being here. It is going to be good times all the way through. Y'all have a great weekend. Be safe. We'll see you next week. Boom.